Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our June 1st Intermediate Planning webinar. Thank you for joining our June 1st Intermediate Planning webinar. My name is Dan Ba, and I'm a Precision Business Planning Specialist at AgSolver. Today we will be covering spot spraying to save on application cost and prevent weed pressure in fields. Our agenda for today is introduction, identify zones of yield decrease because of weed pressure within fields, select zones and work scenarios representing standard assumptions on yield increase or yield decrease and gated, select zones and work cost yield scenarios, and then finally compare return on investment on zones and also scenarios, and then round out with questions. I do want to mention that we are in Q&A mode, so if you have any questions, please just type them in our chat box below where we have my contact information. And I also want to mention that all of these webinars will be posted onto YouTube once they are completed. Minimize that, open up Profit Zone Manager. So in our earlier webinar this morning, we uploaded yield data for our Sanders fields for 2015. And to give you a recap on this field for 2015, it was a soybean field, and we were having weed pressure, really tremendous amounts of weed pressure right along the fence lines and waterways. To explain a little bit about our operation, we're in a corn and soybean rotation. We also no-till. So typically, and when I was mowing waterways this past weekend, you could really start to tell and see where the initial weed pressure was coming from. And it was right along the fence lines and then also the waterways that you see here and then on the east side. And so one of the big questions that we have within our operation is how do we combat this weed pressure? Do we add another pass to the sprayer, which costs another $4, and then on top of that add another, say, $20 to even $25 for an application pass? Or do we utilize our four-wheeler and our little sprayer that has about an 8-foot boom on it to take care and alleviate some of these lost areas within this field? And that's what we're going to be looking at today within Profit Zone Manager. So the first thing that we're going to do is be a scenario, and we're going to name this scenario non-sprayer application with four-wheeler. So, and what we're doing, a carbon copy of our actual production 2015 soybeans, and then click Save. So applying the same crop budget that we have with the same yield on this, roughly about 78 acres in 2015 soybeans, went 48 bushels, so we had a profit loss of about $5 an acre, with a production efficiency, which means how many bushels produced per $1,000 spent. And then our acreage opportunity ratio, which is meaning that 51% of this field was spent against a negative return. That doesn't necessarily mean that we lost 51% on this field. And then we have our dollar amount of $16,418, and then our total field profit loss at the bottom there. So what we're first going to do, and last year we didn't spray the fence lines with the four-wheeler, so we're going to add a zone, and I just want to see how much yield loss and ultimately profit loss we are giving up due to that application. So just going to make simple zones. We'll call this water hemp. So we're going to keep our budget and just create a zone based off of that. Next, we're just going to keep adding boundaries to that zone. So right next where we have the water hemp and ragweed pressure, we're going to edit boundaries, and our drawing tools populate up again. Select our polygon drawing tool. Saving that. More importantly, we'll start adding larger zones. And for this, we're trying to free up working capital and allow our protection to last longer throughout the year. And instead of running our sprayer out there, which is typically an extra by the time you figure out the equipment cost and also the application cost, could be upwards of $30. And so, and with our four-wheeler, we factor in our four-wheeler cost at right around $3 an acre. And then in terms of application, we factor that to be, since we're not spraying that high of rate, right around an additional $5. So total application cost is right around $8. So by selecting those zones, we'll scroll down. You can see that we have roughly about 2.3 acres, and we could go around every waterway, every fence line. And so, but you can see that just on that 2.3 acres, we actually were giving up roughly about 10 bushel. We had a profit loss of $76 to do that water hemp and ragweed problem, and ultimately a zone loss of $174. Now what we'll do is we'll copy a scenario again and base it off of our no sprayer application with four-wheeler. We'll label this application with four-wheeler. So it's loading. We can come down here to our application with four-wheeler cost. We're going to click on the options drop-down menu right next to our name that we have, and budget, water hemp, and ragweed pressure is our zone name. And I'm just going to put spraying water hemp and ragweed pressure. Then next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to increase our target yield. So say we get out there early enough to combat the water hemp and ragweed pressure, I'm going to take yield up to 10% just as a starting point so that the beans aren't out competing with the weeds in that field. And then I'm going to add an equipment cost, and then which would be our four-wheeler. $3. And then to herbicide and insecticide, add an additional $5. So our application is a total of 50. And then I'm going to click save. So now we're going to look at our zone performance of where we sprayed. So now instead of losing $76 and we've increased yield to 43.6 bushels an acre, we now have only a profit loss of $51. We took return on investment down from 18.6% down to 12.2%. We increased our production efficiency by just a little, and then we've also decreased our total zone profit loss of about $60, $50 to $60. The next scenario that I'm going to create is a whole field zone operation. So we're going to base this off of our actual production. Soybeans 2015, spraying entire field. Well, that creates. And for this scenario, we're going to actually create a whole field zone because we're going to be spraying this again. And then our whole field zone button is a little square underneath all of our drawing tools. We're going to select that. Select it again. Add zone. Whole field zone. Additional spray application. For this, we're going to take our spray cost and it'll $6 per pass for our application. Instead of 45, we're going to bump that $25. So now we are at $70. And we'll bump yield just a touch. And when we're scouting our fields, what we've noticed that the majority of the weeds usually aren't in the middle of the fields where we first have our weed pressure is right on the fence lines and then also within the waterways. So we can look at that zone where we have. And actually we're a little worse off by the additional spray application. So, and what we can do, we can come back into our application with four-wheeler scenario, and we'll start adding more zones around the waterways. So come to options, edit boundaries, click on our zone tool, and then just start where we have the known weed pressure. And this is where the field forensics comes in when you're working with producer or you are the producer and you have a known issue in the field. And for us, in this field in general, it was a tough field to keep clean. And we were also changing our chemistry package in rotation. So then we'll just close that zone. And more or less applying the application where we really need it most within the field and making a whole pass. So we see how many acres that gets us. So come down, review our zone performance. So there we have about 7 acres where we're spraying with our four-wheeler, increasing the yield by about 10% and taking production efficiency up. We reduce our total zone profit loss. And the next thing that I like to do is come and compare scenarios. So on the left-hand side, we're going to be comparing scenarios um, where we have our additional pass with a four-wheeler and our additional pass with the large sprayer, and see where we can really maximize our return on investment. And since we are already doing a 3-pass application, I'm just trying to look for ways to keep money in our back pocket. So here on the left-hand side, we're spraying only the spots needed compared to spraying the entire field. You can see by just spraying the areas where we need it most, you can see that we only have about a $2.50 loss compared to a $8.63 loss. Or when you look at total field profit, we're only losing about close to negative $200 compared to 670. And what I'm going to do, just to make sure we're all on the same playing field, I'm going to adjust our entire yield zone up to 10%. So come in, click on edit budget. Instead of 4%, we're going to adjust that to 10%. So we're going to increase overall yield by 10% on this field. Come back up, compare scenarios. So here we took yield up 10%. And so whereas we're only increasing the yield of spots, to me, even if we spray this entire field, in my gut, I don't think we can increase it 10%, maybe at most 6%. And that's where it comes into play. So we'll adjust that from 10% down to 6%. Since these areas in the middle of the field are already, in general, pretty clean. So you can see how using Profit Zone Manager can play in and weigh your decisions on whether you're spraying the entire field or just the fence lines. And the decision that we're going to be making on our 1,300 acre operation is we have about right around 20 to 25 acres of fence lines and spot spraying that we could spray on our fields. Keep the weed pressure and the fence lines knocked down, spraying with 2,4-D and also Roundup, and then just taking care of those immediate needed hot spots in the area of the fields. So then I'm going to come back and edit this back down to 4%. So and then come back to compare scenarios, and What I like to do is I like to draw all the zones around in the field and then actually print this page. So, and we have a print feature located at the top right hand corner, and you can either print it or save it right to your desktop. So that's how we create scenarios within Profit Zone Manager on spot spraying with four-wheeler, taking care of the immediate action. And so really when you're precision business planning, it's coming in and knowing the background on the field history. So now I'm going to open it up and see if anyone has any questions on how I created this scenario within Profit Zone Manager. I also want to mention that this will be posted on YouTube shortly after we are done, so you can go back and review how we created each of these scenarios. Next week, I want to let everyone know that we'll be, for our intermediate planning webinar, will an in-season nitrogen application achieve improved return on investment? And I also want to mention that I do have my contact information listed. And so if you want to really run any scenario in any of your own fields, or if you have a scenario that you quite aren't sure how to implement in Profit Zone Manager, please feel free to shoot me an email, shoot me a text, or give me a call. We can set up a webinar and work through these scenarios on your own personal fields to help determine, what is the best option. It's not just making a decision, but it's making a a the right decision. So Jeremy asked, so when you are creating these different planning options, how do you determine what is the best way to decide how much to boost yield? So really, it comes into gut instinct or personal intuition. Um, when I do that, I try to look at my overall field average yield, and then I increase these zones to match our field average yield. So this is why within these zones, we'll hop into the application with four-wheeler. So on those zones, I could have taken that up another 6 bushels, so we could have came in and edited the budget another, say, 5%. And so for me personally, in these areas where we had the really bad water hemp and ragweed pressure, this area was just thick. Sprayed it with at the beginning with 32 ounces of Roundup, came back, hit it again with 32 ounces of Roundup, and it just quite wasn't doing the job. And we were applying in these areas, which really we didn't have, and we didn't see a yield increase because these areas are the fields were already clean. Um, and it came down to, this was just our baseline performance within the field, and you try to pick the spots out in the field that are hurting you the hardest. And so with this field, it is a square non-variable field, relatively even when you look at the soil types. In Iowa, we have CSR2 ratings, and for this field in particular, the CSR2 is 88, so relatively productive field. So if we come back to our zone and see what our yield is for those areas, so now we're looking at 44 bushels, and we could even boost that up another 5%. But really, it comes down to what determines, your yield increase or yield decrease. It's your personal preference. So, and if we look at it now we're at about 46 bushels. So more or less, I'm just trying to get these really sensitive areas where we had a yield loss to match the rest of the field. So if we come back and compare our scenarios, we'll have our entire spraying application on the right-hand side there. And you can see now, or at least we're making a little bit more money. And our field average yield compared to when we were spraying the whole field increased overall return on investment by 4%. Now we have, instead of losing $8, now we're actually making 41 cents an acre, or have a $32 profit across the entire field, whereas we're losing 670 bushels. So, and it also takes, when determining this, scouting your fields on a regular basis, knowing where you have the weed pressure. If we were seeing higher weed pressure out here in the middle of the field, right here, there's a waterway, so we could have selected that. Yeah, we could have pulled the trigger on the entire, spraying the entire field rather than just these highly sensitive zones. Also, it keeps the fields looking nice from the road when you have your fence lines cleaned up and you have a clean looking field. So that's one way how we limit ourselves on and cut back on our overall application costs on a field. And really it doesn't take very long to spray this field compared spraying all 700 acres of soybeans. Hit the fence lines. It's easily a one-person job. So that's one way how we are using Profit Zone Manager this time of year. Going out, scouting our fields, using previous yield data, and seeing, all right, what's our return on investment from that application, or does it make more sense to go ahead and pull the trigger on the larger running across the field. And so it's taking care of these highly sensitive areas within the field to produce a profit, or more importantly, save money in times of like this, when commodity prices are the way they are, and working capital is restricted. So and this also helps us save up and justify paying if we need to pay for a fungicide or possibly a foliar feed down the road, so we can spend that additional $30 elsewhere. So like I said before, if you have any questions, or if you would like to create really any scenario on your own fields, please feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. And once this webinar is complete, Ben will post it on YouTube, so you can go and review how I created these scenarios and drawn the zones. And if you have already pre-selected zones, you can upload those boundaries here. So if you have a handheld GPS and walk the areas where you have a weed pressure, you could simply upload a zone boundary as a shapefile, and your zones are preloaded. So just another nice feature that we have in Profit Zone Manager. And if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank everyone for joining our June 1st intermediate planning webinar, Spot Spraying to Save on Application Cost and Prevent Weed Pressure in Fields. And I want to invite everyone to join our webinar next week of Will In-Season Nitrogen Application Achieve Improved Return on Investment? come back. So if there's no more questions, I want to thank everyone and have a good week. See you next week. Bye.